Sahana Bhavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Saha Viryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy and vigor. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace beyond all. So this is Spiritual Seeker's question and answer. If there are no questions, there are no answers. I will mute my microphone so you can ask any question you like.
Swami G, I have a question.
Wonderful. Go ahead.
Okay. Holy Mother and Ramakrishna and Vivekananda and Jesus and all the great sages say that rather than see faults in others, we should look to our own faults and take the mote out of our own eyes. And then I think, where does that, well, say, leave me if I see what I perceive, probably wrongly, to be faults in others? Do I regard it as a weakness? Or and then some people also say that if I see whatever faults I see in others are really my own faults. But sometimes I see the way some people behave is blatantly wrong, if they're lying or they're doing something wrong. So am I saying faults or not? Or I don't really know what the question is, but if you could make some clarity on that for me, please.
Okay. So rather than find faults with others, find faults in yourself, but there's no mention of have guilt about it. There's no mention of criticism to the point of despair or despondency, or getting to a point where you say, I don't deserve. Can you see the difference? So this is sometimes a theological position. It's your fault. So there's this catchphrase, really, there's this play on words, if you will, that is to find faults in yourself, but not to find fault with yourself. There's a great, great deal of distinction. What you are in essence, the Vedantic point of view says, we are full, we are free, we are perfect. There is no blemish. There is no sense of change or unsteadiness in us. That is our true nature. When this true nature somehow gets mixed up with the changing, then we fall into the trap of self-blaming, self-preservation, all the things that are necessary to perpetuate the game. Because it can just be a game, isn't it? The game of life. If it's a game, we need to know how to play it. So if you are learning any skill, you will learn to make an honest assessment. Where am I now? What is my status quo? See, engineers will inspect machinery and they will look for faults as a fact, not as a blaming. They don't walk past a defective motor that has a noisy bearing and then start cursing the motor and thinking that what an unfortunate, ungrateful motor it is. How dare it behave in this way? Why is it so noisy? So they rather just clinically assess what is wrong and make the correction. So we do this when we do the Enneagram, that's what we're doing. We're not saying it's your fault. We're not saying you're to blame, in other words. We're not saying that your childhood experience and his reactions, or your parents even, it's nobody's to blame. So it's not to find fault in this way. It is to look critically and see, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And then to see, all right, what corrective action has to take place. Now, there are some general corrective actions that will take place. And these general adjustments are called generically or generally yoga, an attempt to feel a unity of existence somewhere. Because as soon as we register ourselves to the full and free and perfect, all of the other superficial things go away automatically by themselves. At any given moment, if we can take that pure consciousness, which is flowing outward, and leave it in a poised condition within, and dive deep there, even for a moment, then the external world gets removed. It's not that we are hiding it, or it's not that we are unnecessarily covering it up and not dealing with it. It is not that we are not dealing with the reality in front of us. No, it is actually dealing with the actual reality of poise. And from that nicely stable, balanced position, we can reassess what's going on in front of us in a balanced way. The proverbial count to 10. You're in an emotional state? Well, all right, go out of the back door, count to 10, walk in the garden, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Stabilize the emotions and come back to the issue at hand. So it's that kind of honest appraisal. You'll find that if you appraise the character in terms of strengths and weaknesses, your virtues will win. You'll have more virtues than you'll have vices or flaws. Somebody once remarked to me in London, I think it was, they said, oh, it's okay for Swamis and so on, but us ordinary people, no, everyone is extraordinary. You are all extraordinary. You all have infinite possibilities. That's the way you have to look at it. Infinite possibilities that can gain in strength, that can grow, where you can assert your potency. Do it. If the whole world is divine energy, then all movement within it is supreme energy, divine energy. There's only one source of energy expressing itself, that's divine energy. What do you call Shakti? You're all that. So catch hold of it and use it and express it. It's a wonderful thing to do. So if you want peace of mind, don't find fault with others. Why is that? It's because the finding faults is a destabilizing position. Looking with a critical eye on everything, except yourself, with an attitude that everybody needs correcting. I'm okay, actually, but everybody else needs correcting. And so Jesus put it in this way, dramatically. Instead of looking for the splinter in your neighbor's eye, look for the huge beam in your own. If there's a tree trunk in your own eye, don't look for the splinter in the other person's eye. And if you then have a correcting attitude, you have a wrong philosophy, which says that the world is not right, it wasn't made well, it's full of defects, and open to my corrective action. I have to reform and correct everything and make everything right. God made a stupid world, he made all these mistakes, and I have to make all the corrections. What a funny position God put me in. Of course, somebody like that is happy to make the corrections. They see it as their life mission to correct every flaw, to be some kind of perfectionist somewhere, and make sure that they are asserting their right, their sense of right. Now, what about those people that you mentioned who are obviously doing things in a wrong way? Then if it's affecting you, of course, corrective action has to be taken, but that has to be done in a clinical way, not in an emotional way. As soon as we get it in an emotional way, what we find is it's highlighting our own flaw. It's highlighting our own vulnerability because it's stimulating our own negative emotions. It's stimulating anger. There's no such thing as righteous indignation. There's no such thing as justified anger. No anger is justified. Not a single thing emotionally like anger is justified. Modern psychological techniques sometimes. Oh, so if you have anger issues, instead of harming other people, go out in the garden, dig a 6-foot hole, spend all your energy as anger taking that out, or punch a pillow. Swear at a pillow. Yeah, unfortunately, you are doing some harm. You're doing harm to yourself because you're creating an anger habit in you. So it's not solving the problem, it's exacerbating the problem. So, yes, we can take corrective action if that is our role to take corrective action. But very often, people get influenced by your own example. If you become a shining example of love and generosity, spirit of service, if you become a powerhouse of love, then it'll affect every life. I'm sitting here in Bourne End at the moment, and I was amazed. I've met three people now already in the short time I've been here, and I arrived here late in the afternoon. And somebody said, "Oh, I remember you from 5 years ago." It's okay, I don't remember you, but I was polite enough not to say that. I said, "I have two teenage daughters. They were very, very troublesome. And you said to me, emphasize their pure being as Atman. Tell them that they are this Atman, that they have infinite possibilities." And she said, "My teenagers changed completely. And I introduced meditation to them. Now, if I have a problem or a lack of peace of mind, they turn around to me and say, 'Oh, Mom, you should meditate. Why don't you meditate?' They're leaders. The roles have changed. They become the parents and the mothers become the child." And they said, "I can't thank you enough for giving me this." I don't remember giving this advice, but obviously I do. I meet many people. So just a few kindly statements, a little guidance that guides a person to their own powerhouse, to their own source of power, not influenced by somebody else's power. And that has a high impact. And to be an example, there's no point in correcting somebody if you're not an example of perfection yourself, and there's no such examples. We are all imperfect. There are imperfections in all of us. So we have to take stock. Now, what we call imperfections are really just obstacles. So we have to make sure that we identify these obstacles and deal with them systematically, find a way around. And our effort that we put out is a marginal one, just a small, small step forward, and the divine does the rest. Just a small loving movement, you can put it in this way: the loving mother of the universe takes over. "Come, I'll carry you, my child." "All right, please carry me." An attitude of surrender like this. So, and then the two other people, one person had come to our inauguration several years ago. Another person had some difficulties, not difficulties. We were doing some puja here in London, and then that person went back home and found their son dead on the floor. And anyway, whatever I managed to do by way of comfort, assisted that person to the extent that they never forget. Nothing special about me and my attitude. It's just simply stripping everything back to basics and saying, I am really just a simple entity that is prepared to be an opening, instrumental factor for divine grace to flow through to others. So it's easy just to give that sense of poise, which becomes an opening, a self-forgetfulness for the time being, that says, let me rather beam forth everything instead of holding everything in and narrowing myself with a sense of self-interest. Have a generosity of spirit, have a sense of sacrificing for others, and you'll see the transformations in others unasked. It's a kind of spiritual healing, a kind of attitude that somebody like Jesus, Ramakrishna, etc. had, merely looking there with a penetrating vision and seeing the divine there fundamentally, seeing the humanity on the outside with compassion, with love, in a related way, coming to their level, and then transcending it by going deeper and seeing there, you are there. That has a transforming effect within them, so that their perfection has to come through, inevitably, can't help but come through. So, yes, let's not find fault in others by being critical. Find fault in yourself first. And actually, when you find the faults in yourself, you can more easily assist others because an empathy comes. The great example of that is circumstances of bereavement. Some people, the expression is lost somebody. Well, how can you possibly have any empathy for somebody if you haven't been through what they've been through? If you yourself don't know what bereavement feels like, then you'll make a kind of embarrassed dialogue. Oh, so sorry for your loss, but they're in a better place. All these kinds of things have a useless impact. And then an awkwardness. People don't know what to say from there on. They rather avoid a person who has suffered this painful grief. So this grief we have to go through. We have to go through all these experiences. It is very useful, very enriching, very rewarding. And then we're in a position to understand, oh, this is what the other person is feeling. So when we find faults in ourselves and we see them in others, it's from our position of empathy, not criticism. There's a vast difference. We come to a human level where we come to a human understanding, and at that level we can have compassion. And then we go beyond it and say, but the perfection is there. So on the surface, you'll be saying, oh, what a pity, I'm sorry. And on the surface, you'll be saying, yes, I'll do something. Yes, I'll pray for you, and all the rest of it. Behind it, you're saying, but Lord, you're full and free and perfect standing there. You don't have any defects. There's nothing to cure. There's nothing to change. And whatever is to happen is happening in the now, even if it's a seed sown to grow and flower in the future. So you take the adopted stance. Whatever you want is already accomplished. You put it out with faith, absolute faith that things will be well. All will be well, and all will be well, and all manner of things will be well, says Julian of Norwich. That confidence we have to have. Today I looked at a house for which somebody is proposing to purchase, and everything is in place, but things are slow. So I said, I did some kind of cleansing and blessing there and so on and so forth today. And then afterwards, as we were walking back, the prospective owner or buyer said, yes, with a bit of luck. No, luck has nothing to do with it. Or to say, yes, maybe. No, not maybe. Or perhaps. No, not perhaps. It's either there or it's not. You either are confident that when you post a letter, the postman will do the rest. You don't have to stand there supervising the postman to make sure he took your letter away. That level of trust has to be there. And where things go wrong and where things are irregular, then and you can't change them, then you accept. You can't. What cannot be cured has to be endured, is a phrase. Accept it. Nothing else I can do. All right, let it happen. So that attitude has to be there. So if you want peace of mind, yes, don't find fault in others. If we are to talk about the subject of peace, there's an interesting book here, A Guide to Spiritual Life. Spiritual Teachings of Swami Purnananda is there. And it so happens that one question is, how can one have peace, is the question. So I'll read the answer and we'll see if we can make some commentary on it. He answers very directly, not like a politician. By loving God and by having true faith in Him. You can say Him, you can say her, you can say it, Upanishad say it, put any gender you like. One cannot attain peace in the very beginning. The human recognition, yes, I want peace, means, well, I haven't got it now, but at some stage it will arrive in me. So one cannot attain peace in the very beginning, at the foundational level. One has to cry with a longing heart and be restless for a vision of God. Same thing with anything. You have to have a resolve, you have to stick to it, and there has to be an emotional feeling, inward feeling about it. Then slowly comes peace. He's talking of devotees, assuming that most people, including the questioner, is actually a devotee. Devotee means a bhakta, somebody who wants to cultivate a love of God. When so slowly comes peace, we shouldn't be in a hurry. It's something that dawns on us little by little. It's like watching a beautiful scenery with an agitated mind. And as we gaze on the scenery, slowly we see a calmness descend. And then it descends to a different level, another level, until we find an absolute silence. That level of peace is there. When a person does not find any peace through the worldly enjoyments and becomes disgusted with them, as a second aspect of it, then he feels attracted to God. The more restless you are, the more you hunger for peace. Nothing wrong with restlessness. I don't have peace of mind. Blessed are you. The more you are restless, the more peace will emerge, because the more the felt need for it will emerge. The more thirsty you are, the more you crave water. If you really want peace, increase your inner restlessness for God. Then the next obvious question was, well, how can one have love for God? Why should we love God? Is there any reason? And the Swami Purnananda answers, by meditation, devotional practices, prayer, and then he says, and so on. Now it's an answer that anybody would give, but when it's done with an understanding, what do we mean by all these things? What do we mean by meditation? By meditation, we mean a poised condition of the mind where a single thought exists, where there's a kind of union of individuality and where subject and object merge into one thing, same thing. What is devotional practices? It is taking all your emotional feeling and pouring them into all these actions, not just sitting in front of a shrine, but during all your job, your working, waking life. And that what is prayer? You think prayer is petitional? No, that's restlessness. That's dissatisfaction. Prayer is a feeling, an inward feeling of thankfulness, wonder, thankfulness, adoration that leads you to a listening. It is listening to the quiet, still voice of the divine. Can a person realize God while living in the world is the next question. Of course, we know the answer is absolutely yes. But this is his answer. Does anyone live outside the world? No, Maharaj. What I mean is this. Is it possible for a householder to realize God? And then the answer comes like this. Then he says, then say that. Say what you mean. Yes, one can, but with great difficulty. And then the devotee, should one renounce the world if dispassion arises? If dispassion arises, yes, of course, naturally it'll come. One should. That is called renunciation. When true dispassion dawns in the heart, it spreads more and more like a wild forest fire. As Sri Ramakrishna used to say, a fish gets relief and joy when it escapes from the net. It never wants to be trapped again. Similarly, when a person gets rid of the bondage of worldly life, he never wants to be caught again. And he knows the trap, and he knows how to observe it, see it, and he knows how to get out of it. Is it possible to realize God without a guru? These are all common questions that people ask. It seems to me, is the reply, no. It is not possible to realize God without a guru. It is the guru who points out the path of the chosen ideal or the chosen deity through a mantra. One may have many, many upagurus. Upaguru, that is, other manifestations of that one guru or subsidiary teachers. But the real guru instructs. Follow these spiritual disciplines and have the company of the holy. In ancient days, it was the custom for the disciple to live in his guru's house. The guru would keep watch over his disciple, and the disciple would serve his guru. And if the disciple went astray, the guru would bring him back to the right path. One should not accept a person as one's guru unless he is a Nora Brahman or a soul highly advanced in spirituality. How can one recognize a perfect guru? Well, the only perfect gurus, of course, are the incarnations. One can know if one lives with that one for some time. The guru is supposed to observe the life of the disciple, of the disciple. If he sees that the disciple has tremendous attachment for worldly enjoyments, which can hardly be controlled, he should not initiate the disciple. There's always the possibility of freedom, in other words, and that is seen. Yes, you may be bound now, you may have difficulties now, you may be struggling now, but there are infinite possibilities within you. Gradually they can unfold. You can fulfill your desires for the time being, but afterwards, when you get tired of them, then you can make an advance in a different direction. And then how can the mind make the mind one-pointed? Japam, the practice of japa, the practice of constantly repeating your mantra, and meditation are the means of concentrating the mind. Pranayam, that is breath control, is also a means, but it is not safe for most. Pranayama demands strict regulation in life. Otherwise, it may cause diseases, disturbances of the nerves. Today, you find great emphasis on this pranayama, but look at this caution happening here. When people say, oh, I practice pranayama, I'm a little skeptical. Well, who taught you this? How far do you go? In Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga, there are 3 exercises to do with breath and breath control. Simple things, he states. These particular methods are not harmful if done in a regular way, but anything further would be harmful. So there's a caution to do with it. After all, what is pranayama? It is a directing and controlling of divine energy through the motion of the lungs, no doubt, as the easiest means. But meditation is also pranayama, psychic control, controlling the mind. The mind is the energetic, subtle energetic version of material energy. What is the proof of God's existence? There's another question coming here. And the answer, the seers have said, you see, so many questions arising, which may not have occurred to you or may have occurred to you, but you maybe are shy to ask these questions. But these are common questions everybody has. The seers have said, we have seen God, and if you follow this way, you will also see him. The master used to say, that is Ramakrishna, merely by saying hemp, hemp, you will not be intoxicated. You must practice you must procure hemp. Prepare it, take it, and then wait a little while, and gradually you will get intoxicated. Merely by saying, God, God, you will not realize him. Practicing disciplines and then wait for his grace, you will see him in time. Shouldn't be in a hurry. It's a waiting. You do whatever is necessary and then wait and see what grace comes, what grace flows. Sometimes while practicing japam, the mind becomes blank. What causes that? The devotee asks. And the Swami Brahmananda answers, Patanjali, the author of the Yoga Sutras, mentioned this as an obstacle to yoga. Meditation is an uninterrupted flow of thought toward God. When meditation ripens, the vision of God comes, and then comes samadhi. What does it mean by ripening meditation? It means through practice it becomes easy and natural, and the mind simply glides across the border to blissful base. Effortlessly it happens. That experience comes. So these are useful questions and answers that are contained in this, a guide to spiritual life, spiritual teachings of Swami Brahmananda. It's compiled by Swami Chetananda of St. Louis. All right. So are there any other questions? We could expand, of course, on those particular questions. Well, firstly, my question, Jean, about the faults and all that. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you explained it very well, Swamiji, and also the practicality of it and the practical steps involved, as well as your explanation of it, was very welcome indeed.
Thank you, Swami.
You see, this is Ramakrishna's example about the cobra, the dangerous snake. The holy man going through a village, and the snake wants to bite. So what to do about such a thing? Well, in your own case, you're not allowed to bite. Nobody's allowed to bite. Nobody is allowed to spread their venom. Venomous attitudes are not permitted. These are dangerous to you. It's not that you're biting the other person. You're actually damaging yourself first. But that doesn't mean to say you can't hiss in a measured way. It doesn't mean to say you can be the doormat. It doesn't mean to say you cannot exert your strength and stand up for yourself and learn to say no if that's what's necessary. If I see somebody on the street and snatches a handbag, I'll surely run after him. I'll surely do my best to, we call my youth how to do a rugby tackle and bring the person down and bring the purse back. I'll surely do that. Do I hate the person who is doing the robbery? No. If I were to do that, I'd be hating myself, because there are times when I might look at something and, oh, I would like that. But then when I see the divine within it, all that goes away. So I always use a funny example because I always have a watch on me. So some people say, oh, the Swami is fond of watches. Then supposing we're in a dormitory situation, and I think there's another person, I like his watch very much. I'm going to say, very tired, and go to bed and pretend to snore. And when everybody else comes, I wake up and I go toward the watch. And as I'm about to catch it, I look at the dial, and there I see the face of Ramakrishna or Jesus looking at me. Will I steal it? Not at all. So if I see that divinity and feel that divinity everywhere and everything, then what harm will I do? What negativity will I incur? What wrong will I do? What vice will I bring out? I can't do it. So if you see God in everything and in everyone, then it all becomes love. It can't be anything else.
Beautifully explained.
You hit the nail on the head, Swami. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if the nail feels happy about it, but anyway. Okay, good. I can say a little bit more about japa. There's a book here, Japa and Meditation. These are summary quotations from Holy Mother.
Swami,
Yes.
could I ask you a question about japa just before you?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Sometimes when I do it, there's two things. Sometimes when I do it, I just lose concentration. But other times, it's like you sink into a sort of silence with it. So when I count it on my Rudra beads, I notice that I'm doing the same unit of time, same length of time, half an hour. But sometimes I seem to repeat, far more instances of my mantra than I would at other in other sessions. Sometimes that's due to distraction, maybe, or lack of concentration. But other times it doesn't feel like that. It just feels like it's, I don't know, you're more peaceful, or you're doing it much slower. There's more intent about it, or there's more, I'm not maybe expressing that clearly, but I don't know if you catch my drift.
So you see, if you're repeating the mantra, if you're doing your japa during the day, when you're doing all these other activities and keeping that going, that has a slightly different purpose and function. What you're doing is you're practicing the presence of God. And if I call Dermot Dermot a few 100,000 times, I don't have to sit and meditate now, what does Dermot look like? Because the name recalls the person immediately. So if your mantra is a sound embodiment of your chosen ideal, and you're repeating the name, then you don't really have to pause and concentrate on it in that circumstance. You let it work by itself. That's the one function. But then when you're sitting down for specific individual private dedicated practice as a part of your overall spiritual practice that includes prayer, japa, and meditation, then there is a different function, because you're now inviting the deity deep in the interior of your being. And then, yes, it's not just calling on somebody, it's then discovering what is the deep, profound meaning in it, and using it as a form of meditation, in which case you can slow down. And maybe it's not good for some people to be obsessed with counting, because then the mind is moves toward counting instead of toward meditation, and counting is a boring activity.
No, the count would only happen after the session.
So the counting after the meditation is what you're saying?
Yes.
And before the meditation?
There's no counting before it.
Okay. I suggest that you reverse the whole thing and that you do some counting before. And then it's not about counting. It's about turning your beads sufficiently to know roughly, well, not roughly, but the first time round, okay, how many offerings you're going to make. 108 offerings is the typical way. And these are like flower offerings that you make. Like the rosary is like an offering of roses. See? and then allow that to lead you to a sense of purification of the mind. Then the mind then becomes in a better condition for the meditation. Then if you finish off the meditation with more japa, that's a different thing. It has a different function then. And but in any event, if any activity of the mind becomes dull and boring and lacks emotion, then boredom will set in and sleep will set in.
No, that doesn't happen.
Okay. You see, and if you're saying that during the recitation the mind wanders, you catch it and you bring it back. Of course, the mind's nature is to wander off. And it's good to allow a little wandering. Even Ramakrishna did it. He says, my mind wandered to, and he mentions the house of the devotee whose toilet he washed with his own hair, and so on and so forth. Was sick. My mind wandered to his house. It's a wonderful human statement, because it means, oh, you see, even the epitome of perfection in meditation, observe, but you see, that's the important thing, observe the mind wandering up there. And I saw this. And then, okay, thank you for your wandering. We took a nice excursion, bring it back. If you catch the essence of the mantra, yes, the experience that you mentioned, that is gliding into a state of peacefulness, instead of wandering, it's just settling down into an area of peacefulness, then that's good, of course. Then you have found the essence of your mantra also, of course.
Thank you, Swami.
Yeah. You see that there's one person who was on a meditation workshop, and prior to it they had said, see, my guru, he said, instructed me to say my japa and to tell the beads in it, but I find that I can't meditate because I'm so obsessed with the counting and the repetition of the mantra that every time it lapses and I forget the counting, I have to go back to the beginning. Because he said, of course he was number 6, he said, no, you have. And as soon as I said no, as soon as that leads you to a meditative state, then the japa has had its function. It's done its job. That is purifying the mind, setting the scene for meditation.
Swamiji, just out of curiosity, why is it 108 times?
Why not?
I don't know,
Oh.
because the spiritual music I listen to is all the time is either mantras.
So the significance of 108 is this. You need to repeat the mantra a lot of times. Let's say 100. Then why 108 is because instead of doing 100, you're now seeing the significance of a multiple of 9. 108, 8 plus 1 is 9. What's the significance of that? 9 is itself a multiple of 3. In that 3 times 3 times 3, you have a summary of the whole of existence. That makes the number 9 sacred, because any multiple of 9, its digits added up together, will arrive at 9. And so not only is it a reminder of the balance, the harmony, and the rhythm of the entire universe arranged in such a beautiful way, but it tells us that there are 3 evolutionary forces of nature, what we call gunas, and the whole of nature comprises of these 3 things, the interaction of these 3 players. Secondly, the whole range of your experience is only in 3 states of consciousness: waking, dream, and dreamless sleep. And thirdly, at the divine level, at God's level, the Creator's level, there are 3 factors there, 3 functional factors: creation, preservation, and dissolution. Now you have the whole of existence, as we know it, objectively summarized, 3, 3, and 3. So it's not that the 100, but you have to repeat it a lot of times, so 100. So let's make it 108 as a multiple of 9. That's the significance of it. So by repeating, by going through 108 times, you've traveled through the whole cosmos. The whole of existence has been covered. It's a wonderful device. And what is this creator, preserver, and dissolver they were talking about? The useful reference, the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is a wonderful chapter. Akshara Brahman, it talks about the imperishable Brahman. In contrast to that, all of our experience is to do with the perishable. So 6 questions are there. I thought if there are no questions being asked at this session, at least Arjun asks Sri Krishna 6 questions. Of course, he asks many more in the course of the Gita, but these are in a row: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What are these questions? What is that Brahman? Arjuna Vacha Kim Tad Brahma Kim Adhyatman. What is that? What is the Adhyatma? Adya means the first. What is the first Atma, self? What is this thing called Brahman? We talk about Brahman, Brahman. What is Brahman? Can you please define it for me? What is karma? What does that mean? And what is said to be, that is, those people who have taught us, they've talked about Adibhuta. What are the primary elements? And who is called Adideva, the first among all the deities. And then it continues. Next question. Who and how is Adiyatnya, the first sacrifice in the body or in this body? And how at the time of death are you to be known by the self-controlled? So the answer comes like this. Sri Bhagavan Ovacha, the imperishable. Now we know that everything has perishable parts. What is separate from that stands and doesn't move, is the imperishable. It doesn't occupy any space. It doesn't change. The imperishable, the supreme. What do we mean by the supreme? The highest ideal you can possibly have. In the theological arguments of Thomas of Aquinas, actually, which refutes Ambrose. Saint Ambrose brings out an argument for what is the existence of God. It says, supposing we have the highest possible ideal we can ever think of to the human mind, it must be existent. Otherwise, we wouldn't think of a perfect ideal, some perfect goal to set and to achieve or attain or move toward. So, what is that? The supreme, the imperishable, the supreme is Brahman. What is Brahman? What is this supreme? One supreme principle, one supreme entity is there. Okay, what is it? What is that supreme? Well, it is the thing which is imperishable. When you eliminate all the things that perish, what is left is the imperishable. You can't say what it is, you can only make an elimination. What it's not, or what is left, that is Brahman. And that will also be the supreme. Now, it is that Brahman dwelling in each body, not just in some extra cosmic environment or some post-mortem condition. Everyone has a body, and that thing which is dwelling in the body is that imperishable and that supreme. If you like the language of Jesus, you can say the kingdom of heaven within you. It is called the individual soul, that is the Adhyatma, when it's in the body. Just the label changes. Instead of being an overall to do with the imperishable and supreme of a totality, when you narrow it down and see individual bodies, when it's in the individual body, you call it Adhyatma. So the lady I met this afternoon, who said she met me 5 years before, all I did was say, encourage these teenagers of yours to know that they are the Atman, that there is great strength and power in them, that they are, in a sense, at core, invincible. They can do anything. The infinite possibilities in them. They just have to unfold them. They just have to remove the obstacles in front. And then the sacred offering, which causes the origin and development of beings, is called action. If somebody asks you, what is karma? We've heard a lot about this karma. Is it reincarnation? Is it fatalism? Look at this answer. It's a cosmic event. The sacred offering, which causes the origin and development of beings, that is karma, the first activity from which every other cause and effect relationship comes. Every other activity comes. You have to give us this answer gives us the opportunity to trace everything back to a primary causal condition or of a first movement, without which no other activity takes place. Perishable entities are called Adibhuta. There are 23 of them. Adibhuta as the primary elements, there are 5 of them. It's important to know that everything else are variations, manifestations, and gross forms of those subtle elements. And they are really glories or graces, radiances from one central shining entity. 23 of them are there. I alone, says Krishna, am the Adiyatnya here in this body, the self-sacrificing entity. This whole universe is from yajna, self-sacrifice. Some sacrificial action took place. And from there, everything else happened. And Krishna standing in the Supreme, that is in cosmic mind. He alone, that's cosmic mind, is this Adiyatnya, this entity that decides to sacrifice itself and expand itself, remove its own individual identity, and create so many millions and millions and billions of other identities. So some people will take this personally. They'll say, oh, Krishna declares in the Bhagavad Gita that he is himself the only supreme, the only first deity. Christians will say the same thing. Who can be right? Or can they both be right? Are they both referring to a reference point called cosmic mind and standing there in a creative function? And whoever at the time of death gives up the body and departs remembering me alone, attains my being. There's no doubt about this. The beautiful, beautiful chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. It gives us some practical insights, psychological insights in to what condition we should cultivate the mind at the point of death, departure. And the last thought of that moment will be the first thought on the other side. And we experience every night. So if we're doing japa as we fall asleep, then that's the first thought of waking. And it's mentally, unconsciously doing the repetition throughout the night. That means we don't have to wake up specifically for devotional practice, because when we wake up, we're already doing it. The mind is already repeating it. And that gives us enough of our opportunity to say, let me deepen this practice, let me get up, let me take my bath or something like that, or shower, and then let me sit. And use this natural purification and conditioning of the mind to sit down and allow the mind to lead me in further to the great depth, what we call bliss, what I call anyway, blissful base. And let us sit there and remain there happily, easily, effortlessly, gliding across the human border and standing there, withdrawing nicely and standing there in that poised position. So whatever being a man thinks, a person, of course, of at the last moment, when he leaves his body, that alone does he attain, being ever absorbed in the thought of whatever it is of that. So we only have a few moments left. All right. So, good night. Om Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, Swami.
Peace, peace, peace be unto all. And for those
Thank you, Swami.
in France, bonsoir.
Bonne soirée.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Merci beaucoup. Bonne soirée.
Be Hawaii.
Om